everybody. Welcome. Sorry I postponed this for an hour. I got caught up in something. I didn't want to just cancel out, right? So here I am. And we'll be reading from The Anatomy of a False Confession, The Interrogation and Conviction by Dassey by Michael Ciccini. So it's a very fascinating, excuse me, book. We're about half through. Like last video, I left off guys the pictures that were in the book, and now, yeah. So we're trucking along in here, and I do want to say I ordered 2 books that I'm excited to get here. That I figured we could also read on this channel once I get them. Got I got by Richard Dale, for criminal prosecution go wrong by Brendan Dassey. So those are the 2 books that I'm getting that for me personally. Of course, I start yawning now. Anyway, so we're going to start on page 121, and then chapter A Simple Plan. Chapter 23, page 121. So I know there's nobody here watching, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump in and read. And people start coming in. Then, you know, I'll stop and greet y'all, but so, all right. All right, so Wiegert and Fassbender found their team, the state, down a few runs late in the game due to their recent error. They were too greedy in going after Dassey a 5th time. They had muddied the waters beyond belief in addition to all the inaccuracies between interrogations. Now Dassey couldn't even keep a story straight with an interrogation. For example, in the span of only a few transcribed pages, Wiegert extracted 3 different answers as to why Dassey committed their crime. Wiegert: Okay, and what did you guys plan to do? What was your plan? Brendan: Oh, what was your plan? Brendan, talk to me. What was your plan? Brendan: We did it because Steve wanted to go back to jail. Wiegert: Did he tell you he wanted to go back to jail? Brendan: Yeah, because he missed it. Wiegert: He didn't tell you that, did he? Did he tell you that, yes or no? This was an obvious cue that Wiegert did not like the answer Dassey had just given him. He had good reason not to like it. It was unbelievable. The man about to receive a financial statement for wrongful conviction and 18-year incarceration, as Avery was, who would be going back to jail. So when Wiegert asked the same question time, just a few seconds later, Dassey changed his answer to please his interrogator. I want to pause here and say that it is probably 100% possible that Steve wanted to go back to jail because he left the first time after spending 18 years. He wasn't doing so well, and he needed aftercare that he wasn't getting, basically, from it. They should offer aftercare after you come out of jail. So he wasn't getting that, and with all the PTSD and stuff that he endured, you see him making statements like that during low times, you know, like because in the jails are awful and prisons are awful. There's no exception to that. But everything is planned for you and you're on a set schedule. You don't really have to think other than survival, like not to piss off somebody. But like out here, you have to make your own schedule. You have to pay bills. You have like all the stuff that you don't have to worry about when you're in jail. And when you haven't worried about that kind of stuff in like 18, 20 years, it's hard to adjust it, you know? So I fully believe Brendan probably at one point heard Steven say, I should just go back to jail or whatever. Not saying that Steven did anything guilty or would do anything guilty to go back to jail, but I'm sure he overheard or even overheard family members, you know? So it was an obvious cue that Uyghur did not like the answer Dassey had just given. And because, oh, I already read that. What did he say he was going to do? Brendan, that he was going to kill her. Uyghur, did he say that? Brendan, no. Obviously, Uyghur preferred some answers, so he simply asked the question time. Well, what did he tell you? Did he tell you anything? Yes or no? Brendan, no. He just said he wanted to kill her. Brendan, well, just that he was pissed off because Jody wasn't with him anymore. Uyghur, okay. So he was pissed off that Jody wasn't with him anymore. Then he was going to kill Teresa. Again, just pausing here again, I'm sure Steven had made statements before that he's pissed off that Jody's in jail herself, that he misses her, that, you know. So my personal belief is that Brendan is taking references and memories from previous events and trying to give it to Uyghur. So he has something. Uyghur doesn't want these things, so that's why he keeps asking him to change the narrative. Uyghur wasn't too satisfied with this answer either, so while later he asked Dassey the same question a fourth time. When he got the same response, he realized that he might be able to run with it and self-establishment of his own, create a viable motive for Avery's crime. Uyghur, did he laugh about it or what? Why did he say he was going to kill her? Brendan, because he was pissed off that Jody was in jail again. Uyghur, why is he pissed off that Jody was in jail? Did he tell you why? Brendan, no. Uyghur, oh yes, he did. Okay, did he say that? If he didn't tell me, no. But did he say that? Did he make a reference to that? It was right at the end of this line of questioning when Dassey was struggling to recount Avery's explanation of Uyghur says this. You gotta figure it about everything, about all these people telling you what happened, what to say, what not to say. Put those out of your head and just, you know, that what is a fact? A fact is something that's true. That's something that really happened. And sometimes people and may have one to pick up because it was a horrible thing that happened. Fassbender's lecture was off base. That was Fassbender, not Uyghur. My apologies. First, Dassey was confused because of what Uyghur and Fassbender were repeatedly drilling into him, not because of what these people had said to him. Secondly, Dassey was making up stories because the interrogators kept asking the same questions and demanding different answers, not because of a horrible thing that happened. And finally, it was interrogators that destroyed the meaning of the word truth. And while Fassbender was wise to replace the word truth with fact, it made no sense to define the new word fact by referencing it to the word he was trying to replace truth. His declaration that a fact is something that's true simply had no meaning given we would have previously refined the truth. Hey Yvonne, welcome. In any case, Uyghur and Fassbender were smart enough to realize that they were in a deep trouble. And just like a batter whose team is down late in the game, they had to swing for the fences. No doubt realizing that he and Fassbender, at Kaczynski's invitation, had created a whole new set of problems with interrogation. Uyghur urged Dassey to confess again, but this time to his mother. And of course, this confession must be done on the phone rather than during her jail visits, he insisted. They record it and play it for the jury. This would be quote unquote clean evidence. A phone call with his mother would appear to a jury to be untainted by interrogations, leading questions, deception, manipulation, and other tactics that are known to produce false confessions. Hey Jinx, well, Uyghur, okay, when are you going to tell your mom about this? Brendan. Probably the next time I see her. Weird. Because you lied to her, so don't tell Brendan. Yeah, I'm seeing her. It would be a good idea to call her and tell her tonight. That's what I would do, because otherwise on the phone, is it? Uyghur told Dassey this was just a suggestion, but soon he upgraded his advice from like one too many times to me. Sorry, we're done. Do you have anything else you want to say before we leave? I hope you call your mom before I go. Of course, they had no intention of actually leaving Dassey alone. Contrary to their previous lie, they were there for their own benefit, not his. So later in the interrogation, after Uyghur's empty threat that we're done, the interrogators again reminded Dassey to call his mother tonight, instead of waiting for her to come visit tomorrow. And as Fassbender's bizarre, disconnected lead-in proves, when targeting an undermatched child, even the wildest will sometimes connect itch. Fassbender. Mark mentioned talking to your mom about this and being truthful with her now. Okay? If you are truly sorry to the Hallbox, you'll be, and you'll tell your mother the truth about this, okay? Uyghur, you gonna do that? Brendan, yeah. Uyghur, when are you gonna do that? Brendan, tonight. The interrogator's scheme worked. After the police allowed him to return to his cell, Brendan did as he was told later that day. He called his mom and tearfully told her over the phone, prison phones, that Stephen had made him do some of it. And this phone call with his mother was used repeatedly and to great effect by the prosecutors at Dassey's trial. It was used during cross-examination of Brendan himself, during cross-examination of Brendan's expert witness, and during closing argument as means of neutralizing Brendan. It was tough, though, enough to explain to the jury that Dassey had falsely confessed to the government interrogators. But it was even more difficult to explain why he would have to confess to his mother, unless, of course, he actually committed the crime. No one thinks of the jury as unprompted and therefore a reliable confession. Of course, this is far from the truth, but the truth didn't matter. Uyghur's last-ditch effort to save the confession had worked. To use an analogy from a different sport, his haymaker punch had landed, excuse me. Hello. By the time Dassey's trial rolled around, Kaczynski had been removed from the case. The trial judge had not been impressed with his defense trial to have a fifth go at his client, without even sitting in on the interrogation, no less. But even though new counsel was appointed to Dassey, the state's lucky streak was not over yet. Instead, it would continue in the trial itself. Because people were absolute noghead. Let me see if I can find that phone call that they're referencing, because I know it's probably out there. Brendan Dassey phone call to mom. All right. Yeah. Here we go. I think this is the.
Well, hello, this is a collect call from an inmate at the Sheboygan County Jail. To accept charges, press 0. This call is subject to monitoring and recording. Thank you for ever calling. Yeah. Hello? Yeah. Yeah. Did you talk to anybody? No. Oh. What do you mean?
Can you guys hear it okay? I want to make sure you guys are hearing it okay before I continue. Is it coming in clear or can you hear it okay? I just know if I bring it up on the screen and then play it that way, it's not going to play very well because my internet sucks. I'm playing it off of my phone and I'm sticking it up close to the mic on the computer. So hopefully you guys are hearing it okay. So I'll just wait until somebody responds. If nobody responds in like a couple minutes, I'll continue. But I'm playing this phone call to give you guys a reference. This is immediately after Brendan talked to Uyghur and Fassbender, and they told him, "You better call your mom, or else we will." So this is what the state used as evidence as a quote unquote confession, but we all know that's not true. But okay, all right. Thank you, Yvonne.
Mark and Fassbender are gonna talk to you. Oh, what? Oh, what? Huh? About the case. When did you talk to them? Today. When are they gonna talk to me? I don't know. What do you mean? What? Because yesterday, that Mike guy came up here. He talked to me about.
That Mike guy is Michael O'Kelly, and he's referring to that interview that they did. He's talking about an interview that they did in the classroom when Michael Kelly was interrogating Brendan just as bad as the actual interrogator. So that's who he's talking about when he says that Mike guy.
I haven't talked to nobody. I told you, nobody called me and lets me know nothing. Yeah.
BB! Are you my BB? I'm sorry. Are you my BB? BB? Or are you a new BB? Let me highlight your comment. I still can't tell your profile picture. Well, if you're my BB, I'm really happy to see you. If you're a new BB, I'm still really happy to see you, so welcome.
You even have to say it, Brendan. Huh? Why? Because just by the way you're acting, I know what it is. What? I don't want to say it over the phone. But what all happened? Huh? But what all happened? What all happened? What are you talking about? Well, me and Steven did that. What about it? Well, Mike and Mark and Matt came up here and they took an interview with me and said that if they think I was lying, but so they said if I come home with
shit.
Yeah, but if I came home,
You can tell he's so badly to say, they're trying to get me to confess, but I'm innocent. But if I don't confess it, he basically just said, I'm going to go to prison for 90 years. So they were threatening a 16-year-old kid with 90 years in prison if he doesn't say what they want to say. And so he has to try to make this phone call and give and say these things that he knows that they want him to say. And he's trying really hard. He's trying really hard not to say, Mom, I'm innocent, but isn't that, it's so messed up.
oh, but like 20 less. After the interview, they told me I wanted to say something to her family. Said that I regretted. So Stephen did do it? Yeah. They didn't tell me about it. Yeah, but they came home with something that wasn't true with me. What's that? They said that I smacked. What? Yeah.
He doesn't smoke crack. Crack
That you
whack.
what? That I smoke. Really? Yeah. They said that they heard that from someone. Who said that to you? Both of them. Really? Yeah. I don't think so. Well, then they asked me if I smoked a cigarette, and I said I did one, I didn't like it. And they said that Travis said that I was always talking about it over by him. Really? Then someone came over with me trying to commit suicide. Why did you even go over there, Brendan? I don't know. I don't even know how I'm going to do it in court, though. What do you mean? I ain't going to face him. Face who? Steven. You know what, Brendan? What? I'm going to tell you something. He did it. You just got to do it. Okay? What would happen if he gets pissed off? What makes a difference? He ain't going nowhere now, is he? No. Okay, then. Why didn't you tell me about this earlier? Huh? Oh.
That was so fun.
I'll see you later. I'll talk to Brendan. Okay? All right. Yeah? What? So did you talk to her family? No. Huh? They just asked me if I wanted to say something to them on the tape. They said I was sorry for what I did. then why didn't you tell him that? Tell him what? That he made you do it. You know, he made you do a lot of things. I told him that. I even told him about Stephen touching me and that. What do you mean, touching you? Well, he was grabbing somewhere where I was uncomfortable. Brendan,
So
why didn't you tell me?
the whole touching thing, by the way, we've all been kind of discussing privately because it was brought up in foul play, and I just want to point out that I don't think Stephen actually read the narrative we're trying to put on it. I think, unfortunately, they picked up that narrative that we interviewed a family member, and then the family member mentioned it, and then I think they then went to Brendan and tried to get him to say it, because I think they were trying to get the narrative going that Stephen was a sexual deviant, and the more that they could try to chances that they would be of convicting this guy because they're trying to find why Stephen would do this to begin with, and it doesn't make sense, just like what we read in the book, why Stephen would do something like this just because it could be mandatory, especially when he was facing such a large settlement from the state. Trying to sort of a narrative of sexual deviant who's going around and doing this to even people in his family. They tried to get, at one point, Barb to say it. They tried to get some of the boys to say it. They even tried to get Jody to say that Stephen was a sexual deviant in their relationship. Basically, that he was just that wrestling and roughhousing, although it's not pretty, was molested, and I think that's why Brendan's saying, well, you know, when we're wrestling, because Brendan loves wrestling, and so does the rest of the family, and you know, even though they were wrestling, he might have, they might have been some grabbing or roughhousing, like what the state was trying to spin the narrative of Stephen's molesting Brendan. Like, no, that's not. But said, unfortunately, that was another was manipulated into believing is that regular wrestling was inappropriate. So I clarify that, because I know a lot of people, especially the guilters, they use that. Well, Brendan said it on this phone call. Well, Brendan said a lot of this phone call that wasn't true, that he felt like he was supposed to say. So.
Was this all before this happened? All before this happened. And this wouldn't have happened. Yeah. And you'd still be here with me. You still were around with you guys. Yeah, but remember he was always doing with Brian and Dad. What do you mean? Well, he would
Yeah, they make it around like air hump. Like, it's a guy's stuff. Like, they're trying to make what guys do to each other. That's just shows. Can you guys hear me up now? But yeah, that's basically what tried to make Brendan believe that was being molested, was wrestling or whatever.
That one time when Blaine was going on with, what's her name? Jessica's sister? Teresa? Yeah, that one day when she was over, Steven and Blaine and Brian, and I was downstairs, and Steven was touching her face. Really? Yeah. Oh, she makes me so sick.
That's the first time and the last time we hear about that incident, by the way. I don't know how true that statement is either, to be honest with you.
So what did they say to you? How many you can I get? What did you just say to me? Or whatever. They asked me if I wanted to be on
Oh, that's not her name briefly to be.
I wish you would have told me. Okay. Yeah.
You can't understand me anymore? I think that's basically, there's like 3 minutes left on this phone call. I'm going to go ahead and just post and continue to listen to it. Wait, did we even get to the part where he said, did we even get to that part yet where he said some of it? Did you do any of something? That was telling too. I don't know, it's kind of a bummer listening to it. I don't like listening to hear people cry that I care about. So like I don't like hearing Brendan like that, or let me just post this link in the chat here. No, I'm sorry, Barb. I thought you were BB. Oh, it's the phone call. Well, I just posted the link in the chat. If you guys want to listen to the phone call on your own. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead. But yeah, that's the phone call that Mark Leager and Tom Fassbender basically made Brendan call Barb to make him essentially confess over the phone. And like I said, hey Jasnaz, you can hear it pretty well in the very beginning. Brendan struggling to even say, like, because you can tell he's trying to say, do it. This is the reason. And I think there for a moment, yeah, I took all to do here. So there's the link, and he listen to it. But I do think that at that point, I think Brendan probably did think and did something. But I don't think that it kept Stephen's guilty, Stephen's guilty, Stephen's guilty. And I know that he's often said, especially in the one interview with Jason Flom, he thought he was helping the detectives by giving this information. Basically feeding into their story because they were saying, like, you need to help us. So, and then obviously that turned around and it wasn't helpful to anybody. But yeah. So we're on page 127, chapter 24, luck getting key at trial. As discussed in previous chapters, the state caught a lot of pretrial breaks, some of which came courtesy of pretrial counsel, Asshat, Len Konchensky. That's not in the book, but I added that. I agree, Jasnaz. I get really frustrated with Governor Evers' lack of attention to this stuff. But Dassey's appellant lawyers, who also argued that the state's underserved good fortune continued at trial, where Dassey's trial lawyers did or failed to do several things that damaged his defense even further. First, they claimed the trial lawyers failed to sufficiently demonstrate to the jury that Edgar and Fassbender, so-called. More specifically, at trial, the prosecutors used the incorrect details of Dassey's statements as evidence of his guilt. It was therefore very important to know where those details came from. If they came from Dassey, then that would be evidence that the confession was truthful. But during closing, the state also argued that Brendan cooperated because he said that Paul Buck had been shot in the head and it had gone to Radford Hood. Problem, of course, is that these details did not come from the Dassey. From Dassey. The confession as being corroborated and therefore truthful. Second, Dassey's trial lawyers agreed to allow the prosecutor to. In part of the video, the jury never saw Dassey told his mother that he had confessed only because police got to believing her son had committed the crime and would therefore be harmful to Dassey's fault. If they showed that part, by the way, if they showed that part where, did you do it? And then he's like, no, they got to my head. And it before that was saying, if I said doesn't mean what actually happened or what Stephen said. And then Barb was like, what do you mean? And said, what if what I said, wasn't true? And then, and then he said the statement, they got to my head. When the investigators were, by the way, were watching him say this, the second he said that, they came back into the room very quickly. And because I think they were hoping that Brendan would actually confess more to this crime. But he started to recant his confession. So as soon as he said that, they came back into the room. I'm not sure Roxana, if he did or didn't. But anyway, when they came back into the room, Barb then started questioning the detective, saying, "What did you do to my kid?" Basically, did you make him confess? That was like a little glimpse of the fact that Barb even knew that you could easily get those people. You could easily get confession out of Brendan because he was easily susceptible to that. So, you know, if they showed that, you would clearly see that everything that was just said was true, because now Brendan's starting. As soon as those detectives lay off of him, you saw that he was like, "Wait, I can't believe I just said all that. None of that's true. They got into my head." So, and they're actually going to go into this in this chapter right now. The appellant lawyers argued, however, this was not a reasonable strategic decision. Rather, the video actually showed Dassey's mother challenging his interrogators. "Were you pressuring him?" Which they should have saw. The jury should have saw that. And that could be more important to a false confession defense than for the jury to see the defendant immediately recanting his confession. If the jury had seen Brendan's recantation and Barb's reaction, it would have understood that Brendan had credibly asserted his innocence in the interrogation. And third, the trial lawyers never really even put on a false confession that by co-author Danielle Chomacki and Lawrence T. White. The appellant lawyers argued that the jury simply do not understand why a person would falsely confess to a crime he didn't commit. In fact, our study turned article revealed that nearly 17 highly educated juror-eligible citizens mistakenly believed an innocent person would never confess or would only tremendous pressure. Weir and Fassbender used much softer but equally effective interrogation tactics on Dassey. They wisely avoided applying the strenuous pressure that jurors associate with false confessions. Given this, the trial lawyer should have called a false confession expert to testify. According to Dassey's appellant lawyers, Lawrence White had already reviewed Dassey's confession for jury beauty and deed of inquiry. Interesting. Further, they said, Mr. White had even agreed to testify at Dassey's trial. He would have explained to the jury how the interrogators' softer tactics, including lesions, false promises, and minimalization, were known to increase the risk of false confessions. The appellant lawyers argued that because the jury never had the benefit of hearing all the version, contamination, and intricate dynamics of the interrogation process, Dassey's defense was irreparably harmed. That is, the prosecutor was able to argue to Dassey's detail provided by the defendant in the confession tells us that it's true. You can't have that rich of a detail. Similarly, because the trial lawyers did not show the jury that Dassey recanted as soon as the interrogation ended, for witness to explain the interrogator's tactics were known to produce false confessions. The prosecutor was willing, but false, claimed during the jury trial. People who are innocent don't confess. The defendant confessed because he was guilty, because he did it. An innocent person is not going to admit to this. Blech. Hey, Carol, welcome. Hi, Under Your Scars, welcome. But Wisconsin kids, lucky they are to be playing their trade in the dairy state. Why? Because most of Wisconsin's trial judges allow prosecutor defendants by mere preponderance of evidence standard, and despite what the United States Constitution guarantees, not require the state to prove defendant's guilt beyond reasonable doubt. This is true in Dassey's case as well. When the trial judge described, he explained the term reasonable doubt. But then Justice Wiegert told Dassey that anything he had said could be used against him. He told that anything he said would be used for him. Dassey's trial judge employed a tactic. He took a Wiegert-like 180-degree turn to the jury. You were not to search for doubt. That's bullshit. I'm sorry. Prosecutors love this jury instruction for several reasons. First, any fair-minded person would admit that you tell the jury the state must have reasonable doubt, but then tell them not to search for doubt, but to search for truth instead. This can only lower the burden of proof. A jury thought that a charge is merely probably true, also known as lower ponderance of evidence standard, he or she would feel obligated to convict. Why? Because the judge just instructed the jury. Where am I? I just lost mine. If the jury thought that a charge was merely probably true, the judge just instructed the jury not to search for doubt, but to search for the truth. If the defendant is probably guilty, then a search for the truth requires a conviction. Prosecutors have long denied this burden-lowering effect, citing a lack of empirical proof to support the claim. So Lawrence White and I published 2 controlled studies that jurors received jury instruction convicted at significantly higher rates than those received illegally. Who received Wisconsin's jury convicted at the identical rate as those who received no reasonable doubt instructional, and there are jurors who were told not to search for doubt, but to search for truth. As Wisconsin jurors were nearly twice as likely to mistakenly believe it was legally proper to convict a defendant, even if they had reasonable doubt about his guilt. According to the instructions observed, Wisconsin's jury instruction language impermissibly portrays the reasonable doubt standard as defense tool for hitting the truth. And here is the part. The Fassbender hid behind their desire for the truth while strongly arming Dassey into telling them what they wanted to hear. So they are to be seeking the truth as they try to win convictions at any cost. Are you talking to me under your scars? Am I not coming in clear again? I might just switch to my phone here in a minute. If I keep breaking out. Hold on. Yeah, hold on. Let me switch to my phone. It's the internet. I tell you guys. People tell me, "Oh, what can we donate to you? What can we give to you?" I keep telling Brendan, but really, it's internet bill. I'll be right back. Can you guys hear me now? Should be a lot better. Just my chair, because now I'm facing a different direction. Yes. Okay. We're back. Oh, Dieter. Dieter's laying on my bed. I didn't realize he came in. All right, let me scoot this back down. Excuse me. I scoot the computer up because I think that might help. Okay. All right. So I don't know where you guys could have or couldn't have heard me very well. Yeah, don't forget to thumbs up the stream, guys. But I'm just going to go ahead and probably repeat this last paragraph, and I feel like we'll be safe doing that. Okay? Right. The other reason prosecutors love Wisconsin's pattern jury instruction is that it allows them to cloak themselves in the truth flag while dismissing the defense lawyers. Yeah, it's the internet. It's the Wi-Fi from my laptop. It really sucks. So I apologize for the quality of this. On my phone, it's a lot better. It probably sounds distorted on my phone because it's a phone microphone, but I'm actually looking into getting a my own internet. Right now, the internet is satellite through my parents because of the cable and all that, but I've been looking into getting a separate internet for just me because it really does interfere with a lot of the things I like to do. So anyway, like this, I like to do this for you guys. Anyway, the other reason prosecutors love Wisconsin's pattern jury instruction is it allows them to cloak themselves in the truth flag, while dismissing the defense lawyer's arguments as mere attempts to create doubt, something for which the jury should not be searching, according to the instruction. As a Washington court observed, Wisconsin's jury instruction language impermissibly portrays the reasonable doubt standard as a defense tool for hiding the truth. And there is ironic part. Just as Wiegert and Fassbender hid behind their supposed desire for the truth while strong-arming Dassey into telling them what they wanted to hear, so too do prosecutors claim to seeking the truth as they try to win convictions at any cost. For example, if Wisconsin's prosecutors were really after the truth, why did they argue to Stephen Avery's jury that only one man, Avery, murdered Halbach, then argued to Dassey's jury that both he and Avery raped and murdered Halbach? One or both of these stories must be false. More significantly, if Dassey's prosecutor really wanted the jury to search for the truth, why wouldn't he agree that innocent people don't confess? False confessions were well documented and widely known at the time of Dassey's trial. As his appellant lawyers demonstrated shortly after his conviction, hundreds of the confessions have been proven false, and many more have been shown to be unreliable. Clinical studies have proven, moreover, that juveniles and mentally limited are particularly vulnerable to false confessions. The prosecutors don't care that they were using alternate versions of the truth, depending on which defendant was on trial. In order to win both cases, and Dassey's prosecutors had no interest in the behavioral research of false confessions. When the evidence didn't suit the state, the prosecutors didn't just ignore it. He actually told the jury the opposite. People who are innocent don't confess. The jury brought into this sophistry and it convicted Dassey on all counts. Ironically, in doing so, the jurors may have fallen for the same type of wordplay that Wiegert and Fassbender used to trick Dassey into confessing in the first place. What can you do to help what, Roxana? Not me. No, I was joking. Don't send me any money. That was just me being sarcastic and joking. So that was the end of chapter 24. Now on to chapter 25, page 131, mailing in the appeal. I had practiced criminal defense for many years without handling appeal. Rather, all of my work was at the trial court level, ranging from pre-charge representation all the way through the jury trial and, when necessary, sentencing. Within many years into my practice, I teamed up with 2 other lawyers in representing a defendant in an appeal, my first and last. I wasn't surprised that appellant work was tedious. I had already suspected as much. I had, to that point, avoided appeals because I didn't want to lose sleep wondering if I used the correct color paper for the brief's cover, set my margins exactly right, used the court-approved font, and appendix in perfect form, or submitted just the right number of copies. As a trial lawyer, I was already losing sleep. I didn't need to add these hyper-technical concerns to the list of things that were keeping me up at night. Rather, what really turned me away from doing more appeals was this. We had raised several issues, including an incredibly strong constitutional issue. Yet that particular topic was nowhere to be found in the appellant court's decision. When reading it, my first thought was, do I have all the pages, or did I somehow lose one? When I realized I had the entire decision in my hands, I soon figured out that the appellant's court had simply ignored our strongest issue en route to deny our appeal. And when the appellant courts decide what they will address in particular issue, they operate, in some respects, like the police. That is, just as investigators or interrogators had different tactics for getting suspects to confess to their predetermined version of the truth, appellant courts also have several tactics designed to reach their own predetermined outcome, affirming the defendant's conviction. We could be seeing that right now with Steven's stuff, couldn't we? Because he's in the appellant courts, isn't he? Or did he go beyond that now? First, appellant courts will sometimes acknowledge the defendant's argument, but then simply skip the required legal analysis and just rule against him. For example, when Dassey's appellant lawyers challenged his confession, the role of the appellant court was to conduct a careful examination of all the circumstances of the interrogation, and the precise issue for the appellant court to decide whether Dassey's confession was 1, voluntary, or 2, coerced by the interrogator's threats, false promises of leniency, and other tactics. Further, because Dassey was a juvenile, even more when required to the court, his age alone triggers this court's duty to review his confession with special care. Dassey's appellant lawyers presented nearly 30 paragraphs and 16 pages explaining why Dassey's confession was coerced. And this does not include their sections that recap the confession itself or discuss the related argument that Dassey's trial lawyers were ineffective for the way they handled the confession. So when the appellant court rejected Dassey's argument, how much space did it spend in carefully examining all of the circumstances of the interrogation? In pages, less than 1. In paragraphs, 3. In first of the 3 paragraphs was canned language that merely recited a couple of case names and stated the applicable rule of law. The court must balance the defendant's personal characteristics against the police pressures using to induce the statements. This left 2 paragraphs for actual analysis. Because it was so brief and because the prosecutors were so defense lawyers take things, quote-unquote, out of context, this is worth reading the entirety of the court's 2-paragraph decision. So this is it. And That pisses me off a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, because like you said, you know, carefully examining all the circumstances, and it's just like saying, here's my argument on something that's extremely important to me, and I need you to say yes and no and your reasons why. And it's kind of like them saying no just because, as if you're not worth a proper response or answer to. So that's kind of messed up, but because it's a human life, but you know, whatever, right? But here's the paragraph response that the appellant court denied for Brendan. The trial court heard the testimony of Dassey's mother, his school psychologist, and a police interviewer, and had the benefit of listening to audio tapes and viewed the videotape interviews. The trial court found that Dassey had a low average to borderline IQ, but was in mostly regular track high school classes, was interviewed while seated in an upholstered couch, never was physically restrained or was offered food, beverages, and restroom breaks. Was properly Mirandized, was he though? And did not appear to be agitated or intimidated at any point in the questioning. The court also found that the investigators used normal speaking tones with no hectoring, threats of promises of leniency, which we all know that's false, prodded him to be honest as a reminder of his moral duty to tell the truth, and told him they were in his corner. Isn't that promises of leniency? So you're saying there was no threats or promises of leniency, yet you tell him, but in the same breath you say, and told him they were in his corner. Isn't that the same thing? And would go to bat for him to try to achieve a rapport with Dassey and to convince him that being truthful would be in his best interest. That's the same thing, promise of leniency. The court concluded that Dassey's confession was voluntary and admissible. The court's findings are not clearly enormous. Based on those findings, we also conclude that Dassey was not shown coercion, which is false. As long as investigator statements merely encourage honesty and do not promise leniency, telling a defendant that cooperating would be in his or her benefit is not coercive conduct, nor is it professing to know facts that they actually do not have. The truth of the confession remained for the jury to determine. So lying to somebody during an interrogation just to get them to confess, they're saying that's okay. Because he was sitting on a couch, then that was okay with what they did to him. He didn't seem threatened or anything, but I mean, did you ask him if he felt threatened? Because there's a difference between I feel threatened and I appear threatened. Because, you know, as a woman, we are often in situations where we have to act cool, but it's not cool. So that's what I'm saying. Like, wouldn't that be about the same? Let's see, offered food, beverages, and restroom breaks. Yeah, okay. So he was offered a sandwich and some water, so that makes it okay. His Miranda rights were read to him. One, it was read to him in off-skew language where even I couldn't understand that if you read that to me, much less a 16-year-old kid. Like, oh, you have a right to a lawyer, but we can't give that to you. Like, is that really reading your Miranda rights? I guess in Wisconsin it's okay to do that, but it's just that their decision was just absolutely, like, disgusting. It was disgusting. These two paragraphs were disgusting to read for me. Shame on the judge for writing this. Yeah, yet 3 judges said different. There's 3 judges in this whole entire process that agree with the whole, like, this is disgusting, that what you did to this kid was not okay. As Dassey's appellant lawyers later argued in federal court, this blinkered analysis, devoid of context or completeness, falls short of what the Supreme Court demands. I agree. When assessing whether a confession is voluntary, but to call this even a blinkered analysis is a bit generous. It really is not an analysis at all. Rather, the state appealing court simply rubber-stamped the trial judge's earlier decision without even mentioning, let alone considering, any of the coercive interrogation tactics described in the earlier chapters of this book. And any criminal defense lawyer could see that the court pulling out its rubber stamp long before its ink touched the paper. How? In the first of its 3 paragraphs, the court cautioned that it was loathing to upset a trial court's determination that a confession was voluntary. It's easy to see what was coming next. The appealing court would never even bother to conducting the analysis that it was needed to make a real decision. Rather, its decision was already made. Second chapter of the appealing court's conviction-affirming tactics in this as Chapter 18 ward. The courts love to overemphasize the importance of food and beverage when deciding whether a confession was voluntary. Weigert and Fassbender knew this. This is why they offered Dassey a soda and a sandwich so many times that they were unable to put on the brakes. They even offered Dassey's mother a sandwich as she was watching her 16-year-old child being hauled off in handcuffs. It's not funny, but it's ridiculous. Like, that's the thing that you're going to ask somebody. We discussed that in one of the chapters, I think, a while back ago when, while she was watching her kid being handcuffed, her 16-year-old kid, they're like, do you want a sandwich or a soda or something? That's going to fix this situation, right, Mark? And then she replied to him, I couldn't even keep it down if I wanted to. Like, as if, she feels physically sick by this, but I'll totally go for a sandwich right now. Thanks. The appealing court found its interrogator's generosity, along with the upholstered couch, to be great importance. In fact, these are the 3 things in combination. Sandwich, soda, and couch were probably enough to seal Dassey's fate. Hey, Darkside. To appreciate the absurdity of this judicial reasoning, here are the word reasoning, like the word analysis, is probably too generous. Just imagine the reverse scenario. Imagine that a defendant was interrogated, confessed, and convicted at trial. What if, on appeal, he argued that because he was seated in an uncomfortable folding chair, was not offered any food, and was only given a cup of tap water instead of a soda, his statement should have been suppressed? The appealing court would reject that argument faster than Weigert can read a Miranda warning. Third, the state appealing court also employed an even more blatant conviction-affirming trick. Whether it would benefit the state, the court unapologetically concluded that the night is day, and vice versa. For example, in the most outrageous part of its 2-paragraph disposition, the court simply concluded that the interrogators did not make promises of leniency to Dassey. But in reality, Weigert and Fassbender repeatedly told him by talking that he was helping himself. As Chapter 12 illustrated, their promises went on for hours and days, and ran the gambit from the general to the high specific. Dassey's appellate lawyers argued that when the appellate court found that Weigert and Fassbender did not make any promises, it unreasonably ignored the plain meaning of the interrogator's words. Any kid in Brendan's shoes would have heard loud and clear that he would not be in trouble as long as he admitted guilt. Further, Dassey literally thought his interrogators would live up to their end of the bargain. Dassey's belief that he was going back to school even after confessing to murder confirms the promise was set, received, and relied upon. If night is day and day is night, the appealing court also determined that the interrogators did not threaten Dassey. But as Chapter 11 explained, when Weigert and Fassbender first interrogated him at Mishicot High School without Miranda warnings, they made the following threat to get him talking, which we found out by Dr. Richard Leo that they planned to, that the reason why they didn't read the Miranda warnings is because they were trying to conduct it as just an interview and not an interrogation. But as Dr. Richard Leo pointed out, that it was still, in his mind, considered an interrogation. But that's why they didn't read the Miranda rights, is because it wasn't quote unquote in the way they set it up. It wasn't in interrogation. It was an interview. This is what he threat to get him talking. We've got people back at the sheriff's office, district attorney's office. They're talking about trying to link Brendan Dassey with this event. They're saying that Brendan had something to do with it, to cover up of it, which meaning that Brendan Dassey could potentially be facing charges for that. He said no. We said no. Let us talk to him. Give him an opportunity to come forward with the information he has. Talk about it. We're not going to just let you high and dry. I promise I will not let you high and dry. I'll stand behind you. And it is difficult to imagine a clearer threat than that, but in the appellant court land, it's just his words, I promise I won't let you high and dry. I'll stand behind you. Do not constitute a promise. The threat that Dassey could potentially be facing charges for that is not a threat. Night and day and night. Oh, yeah, and also telling him that he'll spend 90 days in jail for the rest of his life is also not a threat, I guess. Yeah, okay. Yep, an interview to put that shit on his head. Yeah, exactly, Barb. These three appellate court tactics cast serious doubt on whether law can even be called a profession. Imagine if a medical doctor or nurse simply decided to change the meaning of the words and throw away the anatomy and pharmacology textbooks when treating a patient they viewed as unworthy of their care. That simply does not happen. As many of my colleagues and I have sometimes laminated, what is the point of having law or even language? None of it really matters. That's why when things are being litigated in the Wisconsin State Appellate Court system, the prosecutor can, as the saying goes, mail it in. One of Dassey's lawyers knew ahead of time that his state court appeal would go nowhere. Steve Drizzen used his own baseball analogy. It would be very difficult for Brendan to get relief in Wisconsin state court system. This case is just too much of a heater. In other words, Dassey had just confessed to a rape murder and had been convicted. No matter how coercive the interrogation tactics and no matter how vulnerable the child defendant, there wasn't an elected judge in the state, and they're all elected in Wisconsin, who had the courage to reverse the conviction. Fortunately for Dassey, as well as the defendant in my appeal discussed at the beginning of this chapter, state appellate court cases can sometimes work their way into federal court system. Enter the Honorable William E. Duffin. So, like I've mentioned before, this book was written before and published before the Supreme Court actually made a decision. So we're going to be getting into Duffin stuff and then his opinion on the Supreme Court and how well it's going to go. And unfortunately, we all know the reality to that is that the Supreme Court denied seeing Brendan's case. Unfortunately, spoiler alert, but that's kind of what happened. So now we're at part 5. I'm sorry, Barb, that it does. And I feel like the reason why we should discuss this, though, is because it's important for people to learn how it went wrong and what I think, we want Brendan out and we want to be able to prevent this from this ever happening again to another family. Let's see. So I have one chapter, but I think I'm going to stop here actually because I need to get to bed soon for work tonight. And so I think this is a good place to stop. But reverse of fortune. So we're stopping on page 139 for my own benefit. Let me mark that 139, even though I put the chapter, the bookmark in. Sometimes it falls and I lose it. So that's the chapter, or that's the page that we left off of. Like I said, I cannot say this enough. Oh, well, Barb, he told me that you guys were gonna go up there and visit him today, and he's really excited to see you. So, give him a big hug from all of us, and tell him to go easy on those French fries, and or have a French fry for me. Have a French fry for me. But yeah, we love you guys, and we hope that you have a good visit. And yeah. So I cannot emphasize this enough. I hope everyone does buy this book and supports the author, because I feel like it's a very good read, and I support this book because he's doing a big service for Brendan by writing this book and breaking all this down for us. And I hope you all have been enjoying this so far. And sorry for the crummy internet I have going on. Like I said, I'm looking into options of getting. I think I'm going to. I have a plan, and I just need to do it. Do you keep changing your profile picture on Barb? I can't. I can't see what it is, but I see two different ones. I am reading. It's like I am reading Anatomy of a False Confession. Let's see. This book. Anatomy of a False Confession. The Interrogation Conviction of Brendan Dassey by Michael D. Chinchini. I know I'm probably saying his name wrong. I say everybody's name wrong. But this is the book that I'm reading from. I don't have John Ferrick's yet. I would love to have it one day. I don't agree with his narrative in it. Obviously, his narrative is the same as Zellner's. I don't agree with her narrative. I understand what she's doing, and I do support, doing what we can to get Stephen out. I don't agree with it. Obviously, the narrative of what she's doing. I know she's using it just to get back into court, and once she gets back into court, then she could do other things. But I know John Ferrick's book is the same of, that Zellner is doing right now. I'm trying to say it a nice way without actually saying it, as you can tell. Because obviously I don't support that anybody in the family did this crime. So, but it's I haven't read it. One day I might read it. I have a list of other things though that I would like to get to before I read that book. Like I said, I want to read the Richard Leo book, and then I want to read the Brandon, the other book. So, yeah. Well, that's I agree with that. I'm not saying I hate it. I understand it. I just don't agree with that narrative. That's all I'm saying. So, I think Ryan Hillgas did it. I've always thought Ryan Hillgas committed the murder, and that's a hill I die on. Get it? Hillgas, hill. But yeah, so that's my thing. But I don't, you know, like I said, there's other books I'd rather read. But yeah, you guys should definitely buy this book, Anatomy of a False Confession, and support the author, or any books that I read on here. Yeah, well, I don't think he does, but most, you know, how do you? But anyway, so I hope everybody has a good day. And let's see. So we've got we did popcorn Saturday, and then we've got a food event coming up, and then we've got a food event coming up, and then we've got I think that's it. That's all we have coming up, isn't it? I'm still waiting to hear back on the sweater contest stuff I sent out. So if you guys won the sweater contest and I've reached out to you and I'm just waiting to hear back on you on what you guys want from the merch shop, please let me know ASAP, because eventually I'm just going to forget about it. But you're still entitled to having, you know, your prize. So, and, you know, but I did send out the prizes that I do have that you guys won. So just putting it out there. And I think that's all I really have. I'm trying to get over here to the chat. Nope, that's the wrong one. See, just such bad internet. Anywho, yep, that's all I really have. So I hope everyone has a great day. I'm going to be going to sleep. Barb, you have a wonderful visit with Brendan. Tell him that we love him. Drive safe. And yeah, let's continue to keep doing what we're doing. Also, I'm going to create a poll in the group sometime this week for our new postcards, so keep an eye on that. I'm going to do like I did last time when I put 3 different options up and you guys can vote for it. So keep an eye out for that in the group, and we'll get that going. And I'm almost out of Stephen postcards too, so I'm going to do a vote in the groups and see if people actually want me to continue to buy these or not, or if, you know, if they'll use them, because Stephen postcards aren't doing as popular as Brendan postcards, and I don't know if it's because it's me. Am I the problem? Or like the song "It's Me, Hi, I'm the Problem, It's Me," or if it's just that people aren't interested in doing that with Stephen. But I know that Brendan gets a really good response off the postcards. So, but anyway, I will talk to you guys later, and let's end this on a positive video. Do we have one of those? Hi, Barb's in chat, so why don't we do this video? It's positive, but it's sad. Let's see. This is it.